Hey, hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about TBR Bingo, why it went away, and what my new TBR game is going to be that replaces it. Here I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit. It's going to be chatty. We're going to discuss why this board is leaving, and then future me is going to come in and explain all of the new games. So if you're only here for part of this, then I will have chapter tags and you can skip ahead to whatever you want to listen to. But for right now, let's sit and talk about TBR Bingo. Now, I really enjoy having a TBR game. It's brought me a lot of fun and it's helped me read a lot of books that I never would have read otherwise. And so I never want to be getting rid of one completely. I never want to not be doing something like this on my channel because it's so much fun every single month kind of having this little game that I get to play. And I get so much serotonin from playing a game. I was running into a few logistical problems and a few mental problems with TBR Bingo, and I'll kind of discuss some of those with you. First off, my biggest issue is the glare. I know that that's really petty, but I had such a hard time filming with this board because of the plastic sleeves that I used to put my cards up on the board. You just couldn't see things super well, and every single month I struggled filming with this thing and having you guys be able to read what is actually on here. Second, my other logistical issue is being able to play this for the entirety of a month, but I film my TBR bingos in advance so that I can edit because I do work a full-time job and it's really hard for me to have to film like the day before and edit before a video comes out. So I needed to film this about a week before TBR Bingo was done. Now I do my TBRs before my wrap-ups, which means that if I wanted to do my wrap-ups accurately, my board had completely changed and it was a new board. And I could have switched them, but then my TBR was coming out way later in the month and it was just frustrating me every single month when I would do my wrap up. I couldn't show you my old board. When I was doing my new board, I still had another week where I was going to technically be playing that board. And I tried to do some workarounds with that where I said, oh, as soon as I play, that's it for that board. But there were some times where that just wasn't realistic for me, where I had to play, but I was in the middle of a few books that were going to get me a bingo, which were going to help me buy books. That's going to be one of the things we're going to talk about with the mental kind of issues of TBR Bingo, which is I am no longer going to be having my punishment or reward being around buying books. I want to go back to the mentality of I can buy books when I want to and not have to think of it as a huge issue. Now, I don't want to be going out and buying tons and tons of books. I'd really like to keep my TBR under a realistic number. I don't know what that number is. I'm kind of thinking 20, but I have had such a hard time getting my TBR underneath 20 that I think it's just gonna have to be under 30. That's one of the things that I was really frustrated with, is especially for secret TBRs, sometimes I'd have to buy 5-6 books and then they would count against me and I wouldn't have the opportunity to read them. And with how TBR Bingo worked, I was reading new books in the month. I would literally buy books because I wanted to buy books or because I needed to buy them, and then I would read them right away, which is great, except for the fact that I had older books that weren't getting to be read because those would cost me if I read them. So I was getting really frustrated with that feeling and feeling like I had to read what came on my shelf and that I couldn't read my older backlogged stuff. It also just kind of came into the fact that I've been feeling a lot more like a mood reader recently. So my new game is going to offer up the options where I'm not going to pick my full TBR at the beginning of the month. I'm only going to pick what I believe is going to be about half of my TBR, and you'll see that in a minute or so. And that I think is going to work out really well for me, especially because some months in the year I can read 20 books. It is weird and it's a lot. And then some months I can read 5 to 7 books. And I wanted to have a game where I wasn't necessarily affected by how many books I read and it would still be enjoyable for me to play. Now, I didn't want to have to get rid of my cards because I really like them. I like how they were made. They're good quality. I like the prompts on them. So they will be continuing on. If you've seen these prompts, you're gonna keep seeing them. So it all just kind of came together into me realizing one day that I needed something just a little bit more flexible, something that wasn't going to pin me down so much, and something that wasn't going to keep me feeling so frustrated every single like middle of the month when I'm trying to read things. And also I just wanted to be able to buy books when I want to buy books. I don't want to be feeling the pressure from the board telling me what I can and cannot do. I'm an adult, so I should be allowed to do that. I make all my own money, so why not buy what I want to buy with it, you know? And yeah, I don't like the feeling of having so many unread books on my shelf, but I go through my books pretty quickly. None of them sit on my shelf for more than a year, and if they get to that year point, then I make a huge effort to read them right away. So all of that kind of came together to me deciding that I needed to have more of a board game based thing where it's not going to change every single month, so I can show you what it looks like. We can have the prompts, we can have them in our hands, and nothing is going to be affected, right? And of course, it won't be plastic. I really took a lot of inspiration from 2 board games. I took a lot of inspiration from Becca in the Books' board game, which is Book-OPOLY, and then I took some mild inspiration from Book Roast's TBR Avatar. Both of those have the kind of style that I like, where I'm kind of working my way through something, but also they aren't like I'm trying to get to an end destination where I'm just kind of playing through continuously, and then maybe at the beginning of each year I start over kind of a thing. I also like that both of them had options for kind of non-reading prompts, but I knew that I didn't want to be narrowed down the way that Becca is, where she has certain genres, every single thing that she rolled, because I hate the feeling of, oh, I have to read a specific genre. I like having my prompts be open where I can fit any kind of genre into them. All of those thoughts came together to me creating TBR-OPOLY, which I know I should have just called it Book-OPOLY, but I feel like my game is actually far enough from hers that I didn't want to call it the same thing, because it's not the same thing. Now here's future Amanda to explain why that is. It's been weeks. Somehow I'm wearing the same exact t-shirt from the first half of this video. Without further ado, say hello to my new TBR game. It's quite large, so I'm not going to be holding it while I go over the rules, but I will give you a tour of the board and explain everything, and we're going to get to look at it a lot in just a second. TBR-OPOLY is going to be very similar to regular Monopoly or Becca's Book-OPOLY, where I start on go, I roll 2 dice, I have a certain number of rolls that I'm going to do every single month. Right now I am thinking 6 is going to be my number, but that could change as I get going and see how things are happening. If I get doubles, I have to add a roll, and I'm going around the board. Whatever square I land on dictates what prompt I'm getting or how I'm gonna read or something like that. I have to read the books that I pick for this in the month, and I can read whatever else I want to. So I am limited by reading these 6 or less or more books that are picked every single month for me at the beginning of the month, part of TBR Bingo. And if I pass, that's great. We get to do nothing. We get to move on. If I fail, I do have a list of punishments. I'm going to just pick one at random, and that'll be my punishment for the month. They are kind of a mixed bag. If you have any suggestions of more punishments, write them down below. All that's left is let's look at what the board actually has. So here's the board. I accidentally printed it a lot larger than I meant to, but it is what it is, and it's actually kind of great to have. I haven't picked what me is going to be yet that's moving around the board, but I have plenty of items around here that are up for consideration. There are 4 slots where cards are going to be present, so I'll put those on for you right now. So the cards are pretty straightforward. I have my prompts divided up into even and odds. So literally every single prompt that I have has a number at the top here, and so I put odds in one pile and even in the other pile. They are divided up pretty equally, where some prompts or similar prompts are going to be mixed between the 2 piles. Then I have my non-reading prompts, which you've seen if you have watched TBR Bingo in the past. And then I have my 22 books that I hope to read in 2022. That is actually not all of the 22. There are 20 cards there on the pile. They are a mix between some of the books that I want to read in 2022, the video 22 books to read in 2022. I did not put any books in that pile that have not been published yet, because I don't want to accidentally pull them in a month where they still haven't been published. So that left me with some gaps. I filled them in with some books that I have planned to read for secret TBRs throughout the year, such as my 12 intimidating books to read this year. And then also I threw in a few, just a couple books that I want to read, but I'm not super looking forward to, in an attempt to make it a little bit more of like it's a mixed bag. The idea is though that some of them are just the first book in a series of, I want to read all of the books in that series. So if I pull one of those and I've already read the first book, for instance, I know The Blade Itself is in there. I've already read The Blade Itself, but I haven't read Before They're Hanged or all of the rest of the ones in that series. So if I pull that, then I just have to read the next one in the series. So what we'll be doing is the very first time I play, which will be coming up very shortly in January. I believe it's 2 weeks exactly from the day that this video is published. I'll be starting on Go. Now, I don't get anything for starting here. My first prompt will be whatever I roll and land on. But if I land on Go in the future, it means that I get to go to my radar shelf on Goodreads, which is books that I have an interest in and want to read but haven't purchased yet. And I get to purchase or go to my library and pick that book up and read it. All of these squares that don't have anything are going to be these prompts. And the way that I'm going to determine which one I pull is based on what I roll. So it's pretty simple. If I roll a number and it's an even number, I pull from the even squares. And if I roll and it's an odd, I'm going to pull from the odd squares. Somehow I missed putting one when I was printing. So I hand wrote it in, but it's really hard to see, but it is just the same as the other ones. If I land on one of those squares, I just pull one of the blue cards. For this one, I have to roll a D20. So I'm going to put 20 books onto a list, and then I'm going to roll a D20, and it's going to pick one of those books for me. Buddy read is pretty obvious. I almost always have buddy reads going every single month. I have a few different friends that I read with. I have some family members that I read with. I love reading books with other people. I think it's so much fun. So I put a prompt on here so that if I land on that, I get to automatically just put my buddy read in there. If I land on this square, I get to read a library book. Hopefully I get to go to the library and read a book, but I also have the Libby app on my phone, and that will count for it as well. Brown squares, which were supposed to be much more tan, mean I get to pick a non-reading prompt. The audio and the physical in the corner means I have to read an audiobook or I have to read a physical book. It can be a library, it can be an owned book, it could be a borrowed book, whatever it is, it just has to fit the... What's the word I'm looking for? Up here in the corner, hopefully you can see there's kind of like the starburst pattern. That is the only square on the board that means I get to pick anything. I get to pick whatever book I want. After that, we have book club. That's also really self-explanatory. Now, my book club reads books every single month except for 2 months of the year. So we don't do a book in December and we don't do a book in June because I set forth month-long readathons for us. So if I get book club during either one of those months, I will just have to pick a book that fits one of the readathon prompts that I have set forward for us. The final square that needs explanation is ARC, and I am constantly reading ARCs. I have a bunch on my list. Right now I think I have like 12 in my possession, and I'm actually at the point where I'm starting to get authors and publishers contacting me. It's not always me reaching out. So I wanted to make that super important because I tend to forget about my ARCs a lot of times and don't put them into my rolls. If I DNF a book from this list, I'm okay with that. If I gave it an honest to God shot, that's what I'm going for, more so than finishing a book. And I'm not going to do the rule like I did in TBR Bingo where I have to hit 30%, because there are just certain books out there that I can tell pretty quickly are not for me, and this is not about punishing myself. If you have any more questions, leave them down below, and get excited to see the first round of TBR-OPOLY in 2 weeks. Thank you for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you. If you have a TBR game, link it down below. I'm so into them and I love watching them. I don't remember how my outro goes, but until next time, I'll talk to you in the comments. Bye.